Philip Szostak is the head of Szostak Design, Inc., an architectural firm located in Chapel Hill. A graduate of the NC State University School of Design, Szostak has over 30 years of architectural experience, serving for 12 years as the NC Principal Architect for NBBJ, the nation's second largest architectural practice. Some of his company's other local projects include the Duke University Medical Center and the Walltown Recreation Center. Now, let me tell you about Phil Szostak, an incredible person. And I almost have to put that nomenclature superhuman there because he's coming back from double knee surgery just 3 weeks ago. He deserves a hand just for that. And for being here. How many of you have been to programs or a show, a concert at DPAC? Let me tell you who you have to thank for that. You have that man sitting right there to thank for there being a Durham Performing Arts Center in Durham. Now, I don't, I want to give our mayor credit. He supported it. Even my old boss, I used to work for the city of Durham and economic development, Alan DeLisle, had a big hand. But this is the man who said, we need to have this, and we need to have it in Durham. And at no point, and I will tell you, he may or may not tell you about those days, he would not let those cost-conscious people like me sometimes come and say, well, why don't we take this out? And I didn't say that, or we just make that glass, we'll just make it all brick. And he said, no, I won't build it if you're going to do that to it. So, without further ado, Philip Szostak.
This was a hard project, but it's one of the few projects that I know of that's studied around the country, and it's really one of the most successful municipal projects that I know of in the last 10 years around the country. I remember that first meeting at the Durham Arts Council where it was like, come give us your 2 cents about new Performing Arts Center. We had about 300 people, standing room only, people yelling at us about wasting their money, wasting their time to do this project. It was one of the hardest meetings. You get up there and you go, man, I'm going to do a Performing Arts Center. And people were yelling at us about not doing it. Just get out of their town. We don't. And really, one of the really key changes from then, and this is back in 2003, we don't deserve this. Durham can't do this. And you don't hear that anymore. Right? Pretty cool. Big change. This project started out, for me, a long time ago, back in 1999, I think. I was at my old office in BBJ at the park, and we had Clear Channel walk in, and they wanted to talk about a Performing Arts Center in downtown Durham. But what they were talking about was a 5,000 to 6,000 seat theater for concerts, where they can have big concerts during the winter and all the times versus Walnut Creek, which they were also managing. And we did a quick design for them just to show what that would be. We knew that at that time the American Tobacco campus was a bunch of parking lots. Chain link fences, data was still there. Durham, what does that stand for? Transit Authority? Durham Area Transit Authority.
Durham Area Transit Authority.
Was still there, polluting the ground. And so we looked at that site and we came up with some ideas, and we had comments back. We don't want a Performing Arts Center that smells like beer around here. Yeah, you would, with those kind of concert shows, you would have gotten that. But there was some foresight out there where after those meetings, Bill Kalkoff, which kind of led that group, and put together a group of people, including the Goodmans and Mike Hill and people, and they went to, twisted a lot of risks and things at town and the Durham Convention Visitors Bureau, and actually got through legislation downtown Raleigh that gave up to $1.4 million of hotel occupancy money that would go to a performing arts center of some kind. And they got that passed. And the local legislature group approved that before it went to the full vote. And so back in 2001, I believe, we started collecting money for occupancy tax to go to this. And it wasn't coming in like at $1.4 million, and I don't even know if we're at 1.4 now. Do you know, Keith?
It hits it now, yes.
It hits it now. But we started off, 800,000. I think when we finished DPAC, it was about 1.1 million. But we had a pool of money set aside that everybody agreed to could be used towards this Performing Arts Center. And it started getting a little momentum. We went through 2 city manager changes, and we finally had a study that said this is the kind of theater we want. We want a smaller theater, not a 5,000 seat theater, something that can handle a lot of different kinds of shows. And this is all the money we have, but it's going to cost a lot more than that. And so the city put out an RFP on the streets through the Economic Development group here for developers to come in and develop, manage, build, design a performing arts center that would cost the city no money. And he said, okay, we can do that. So, before all this happened, the NBBJ story and I, just kind of give you a little bit of idea of the personal connection here. NBBJ said, send this project to our Los Angeles office. No, I am not sending this project to Los Angeles to be designed. This is like, you get a performing arts center, and even though I never have done a performing arts center before, it was one of those cream of the crop projects. You got museums and performing arts centers, and those are like up here, fire stations and things like that, kind of down here. But you dream about these municipal projects that you can dream about and kind of put up there as something you've done in your career. And so we thought about it, and so we ended up splitting ways. And so when this RFP came out, I didn't invite NBBJ to the table. So we had my own firm again in Chapel Hill. But the weird part about it is this RFP was not public out to anybody. They gave it to 2 people, 2 groups, Clear Channel here in Raleigh, and Mike Hallmark's group out of Arizona. And Mike and I have known each other. He was also past principal at NBBJ. And we both kind of did the same thing, kind of public interest projects. And one thing led to another. We won the competition, and we took off, and with the cities saying, man, we'd love a performing arts center, but we don't have any money besides this money, so don't come asking us for any money. So as many times as I went back to them with little ideas where I'm not really getting your money, they were like parking, let me get some parking revenue. They went, no. I said, no money. And so in the end, we had to bring to the city council a project that had a guaranteed maximum price, even with contingencies and stuff, to make sure that we had no chance of going back to the city council asking for money. We had to bring them a contract from an operator that said, we will guarantee the net operating revenue, meaning they'll never go back to the city and ask for more money. At the time, Carolina Theater was asking for about $400,000 a year out of the general revenue. And we had to have all the money set aside. That was a big meeting that we presented all that. And so in 2005, we actually presented this, and somebody finally said, go. We had a unanimous vote by the city council, and it went great. And the city council, and Mayor Bell, we have a lot to just thank those guys, because it took some guts to do it. After the baseball stadium went through 2 referendums and failed, they finally came up with some private certificates of participation to fund it. And they did the same thing here. They knew that there was no way that we can go through a public referendum and the time and everything. And so they said, okay, we have a project that's not going to cost us any money. We have the occupancy tax that people coming from out of town giving us money, and not a single penny was coming from the citizens of Durham or Durham County. People still ask me how we do that, and I have to go back and think. It's one of those kind of impossible things to do. So anyway, let me tell you a little bit, just in pictures and some words. Tell you who all worked on the project. We teamed up at that. I think we maybe leave lights on. Can y'all, if y'all can't see this, y'all turn that on.
Better with lights off.
It's better with light off? Off? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We teamed up with Garfield Tribe out of Texas that have done a lot of public-private development finance to help bring this thing through. And then our firm, one of the good things about being awarded the development of this, I was able to pick the architect, which was like the only reason I was out there scrapping to do this is I wanted to do the architecture here. And there's no way, I've never done a theater before. First of all, I was surprised that Durham let me do this thing, but we had it going at the time. We were the only ones at the table. But most performing arts centers, even today, when I apply or submit for an RFP for a performing arts center, even a small one that may be on Franklin Street, which a renovation that I just gave to the University of North Carolina, they ended up going to Boston. You know, a little one that we did in Cary went someplace else. We tried to get, and you know, Asheville went to Boston. So the big names are out there that do performing arts centers. There's a lot of those that have a lot more experience than I do. Nederlander, halfway through the process, the city of Durham, a lot of the arts groups protested about Clear Channel being at the table. And Clear Channel was, they were very arrogant. They said, we're not going to give you any guarantee. And so that again voided the whole idea about what we had to bring to the city. So we put out, we ended up firing Nederlander off the development team. And that was one of the low points. We're going, how are we going to do this? We have to find a developer. So we had to go out for public advertisement to a manager, and we came up with PFM Nederlander. As soon as we knew that we had Nederlander at the table, boom, we knew we had a project. Nederlander, I'll show you in a minute, own here they go. 9 theaters on Broadway. This is what they own. London, they manage some of these theaters. Chicago, LA, Tucson, Durham. Durham. It was like New York, London, Durham. And now when you see, I'll show you the list as we come up. We are number 4 in the world for ticket sales. Last year, I think we were 3. But we're 2,800 seats. The other ones are all over 5,000 seats. You know, Radio City Music Hall in downtown Manhattan sells a little bit more tickets than we do. Yippee. Fox Theater, the Coliseum in Los Angeles, or that other Los town. Let's talk about some of the overall goals. This may be a little bit of boilerplate, but we really wanted to have this thing serve as a catalyst for downtown development. There's a lot of ideas on, there's no way the theater can do that. We actually fought with the Durham Convention and Visitors Bureau about how much economic impact we had on this. We had some very specific goals, but as we went through this public process, a lot of these goals developed further as far as workforce development, minority participation, sustainability, and make sure that thing's in budget. And we went through a lot of city goals as far as who the stakeholders were. ADF, Carolina Theater, Hayti Heritage Center, Duke, a lot of adjacent businesses, budgets, fundraising. Here's just some of the early planning studies that we did. Some of the things I showed you, we ended up doing, going through a monthly public meeting We started off with 300 people, and I think we ended up with 2 press on the last public meeting. I think we knew we had it by then. But this public meeting, every time somebody made a comment, we actually used those comments to make the project better. And I'll get into that a little bit more. One thing that there was, this is the data site, the 2 square buildings at the top. What you see in yellow and in the round here, circle, is the orange area is 9 feet of automatic transmission fluid floating on top of the water table in downtown Durham. Was one of the plumes. There's also was a secondary plume in yellow here. And so all these wells that we showed here, we had to drill wells and suck every month this automatic transmission fluid out of the water table. And then let it rest for a couple of weeks, because what you're doing is you're sucking it inside of a donut hole. And then let it come back to normal. Suck it back out. And you kept doing that. We have 1 well left that we're still working on. This was part of an inheritance from Duke Power that was managing the bus system before Durham here. But it was pretty crazy thinking about 9 feet of automatic transmission fluid on this project. We were given this whole site here in yellow between Vivian and Diamond View 2, which was already planned here but not built, that we can pick. And we went through multiple scenarios of studies of where the theater is, what's the rest of the development going to be like, where should it go, and looking at just a lot of versions. The one thing that came out at this time is the site that we were looking to is the one next to the jail. And everybody, why are you putting city's major performing arts center next to the jail? And the answer back, and what I tell a lot of cities is, this is such an economic kind of a suction tube. Everything wants to be right there. Give the rest of the better land to other economic opportunities. And so we could have picked one up on a hill, something that had a lot more vibrancy to it. Maybe it could have been a better piece of architecture. But we ended up looking at this. This is one of the last early sketches here that showed the idea about from downtown Town Hall, looking down Mangum Street, where Mangum Street changes, and seeing this theater. This sketch of the 2 yellow boxes was a theater for American Dance Festival, as well as the DPAC as you know it today. So we looked at all the different kinds of orientations on where the loading dock would be. One of the key things that I didn't know when we started this project is the loading dock is the most important part about the building as far as the operators go. When you see Lion King roll in with 24 truckloads of stuff, they need to get that off the truck and loaded in this theater fast. And a lot of theaters around the country have elevators and all kinds of stuff that they have to transfer things off the truck up to the stage level. So we set our goal is to have the dock at street level, so the loading, which would essentially say the stage would have to be there with it. One of the early sketches of that site you can see this corner here of Vivian and Mangum here where the building now is. We left a spot there for American Dance Festival to put a building. We actually designed a building for them that we could not get any funding leverage on, and we ended up saying, okay, no, we're going to have to give that up and move our DPAC building over. So a lot of it was about dance. The idea about American Dance Festival, when we started talking to Duke University, they had originally attracted American Dance Festival down here 25 years ago at the time, saying, we'll get you a new theater. And they actually believed it 25 years later. We kind of strong-armed them in being part of the project. But Duke was a great partner. They came to the table with $7.5 million and just a lot of support from me going through this project. And then just the idea about a multi-level terraced theater. And then let's talk, that's kind of the idea of what we wanted to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did do. We're actually number 4 in the world. You know, Fox, Coliseum in Las Vegas, and Radio City Music Hall. A couple of years ago when we were 2nd or 3rd, there was a theater in downtown Mexico City that has 11 million people living there. But we're our little town here compared to Las Vegas or Atlanta, or Radio City Music Hall, or Beijing, and all that. And what I like pointing out here, there's no Seattle, there's no Austin on this list, there's no Houston, there's no Philadelphia, there's no DC, all the big cities that are on here, no Chicago, that have populations 10 times what we have, aren't represented here. What I blame all this on is PFM Needlehead. Those guys are incredible. They can bring the shows in, they understand our market. And we gave them a facility that they didn't have to worry about the cost, because we essentially provided for all the costs up front. They just had to we gave them essentially my story to them is, I'm giving you a Ferrari, and I want you to keep the gas in. You can drive it all you want, but just bring it back with gas in. And so they do, and they're driving that Ferrari quite well. One of my key points I make around the country here is arts facilities are some of the best economic development tools we have to improve our cities. I think it changes the culture, it changes the education, it brings things to do. I mean, one of the biggest impacts that I had on this is I spent almost half my time, or at least once a week, giving presentations like I'm giving today to city or corporations looking to move into Durham from all over the country. They wanted places, an authentic place for people to come and work, their employees. Duke was trying to attract faculty. And so this all worked together to show that, you know, Durham, here's a downtown that you can go watch baseball games, 10,000 seats. You can come to a theater, 2,800 seats. Look at all the new restaurants. American Tobacco now, when we started this project, was about 50% occupied. Now it's over 100% occupied, with the second new building being built since we started DPAC. It's amazing what this does. And people want to live in a community that they have this as a choice. When we started this project, some of the, there's a group called ABCD, is that what it's called?
Yes.
You know, they were really against the project because it was taking the arts money away. And we talked about floating all boats, and one of the things they talked about is Broadway, the demographics of Broadway are white, 50 plus, and have a $75,000 to $80,000 mean income. And here we were in Durham with, you know, a lot of the young artists and stuff going, we don't want an elitist theater for people to use that, you know, at our expense. And so what I think that we showed everybody since now, the last time I saw a thing on Carolina Theater, it's number 10
Exactly.
in the country.
Yeah, I too.
That's pretty amazing. Carolina Theater, which was, I don't even know if it was even ranked, is now number 10 in the country. And so we turned this into a place for, let's go to a show, let's go to Durham. Economic impact. This was the economic impact statement we showed City Council in 2005. It showed $11 million total impact. Right now, today, we're at $25 to $30 million economic impact for that building. The city has been getting roughly about $2 million profit every year and not putting any money into the project. Plus, it's getting $1 a ticket going into a capital improvement fund, so that for the next 30 years, we're actually generating money to improve the building as we go. Instead of the typical game plan like in the Carolina Theater, you run that thing as far as you can, as long as you can, and if something breaks, then you fix it. Not until. One of the things that a lot of people don't know, that this is the first project in the world that got SEED certification, which I think is much more important than LEED, and pretty much any certification that's going around the country or in the world. SEED stands for Social, economic, environmental, and design. So the social issues that were discussed on this project, which is one of the reasons I think that it was so successful, and one of the things that I'm most proud of. Going through this process, obviously, you know, we were going to talk about minority participation in women-owned businesses. That's something we talk about almost on every project here in Durham, if not every single public project. But we went further. We essentially said, my team, the construction manager, and all the contractors and subcontractors, and even PFM Nederlander that we were asking for zero net operating revenue, we made them sign this agreement that we will and we did meet as far as minority and women-owned businesses. And then, you know, one of the things, I forgot her name, that came to all the city council meetings and sat in the front row.
Oh, I know, Anita.
Yeah,
Something.
She brought up the issue about, well, we have these young guys over here that are in detention, and we're trying to teach them jobs, and all you're doing is bringing jobs in from out of state. And what can we do for them? So we essentially made 5% of all the subcontractors and suppliers and people on this job go out, and 5% of their money had to be, or their workforce had to be for workforce development. Meaning these guys were going to detention centers, picking up young men and women, buying them hard hats and boots and tools and teaching them a job. Wow. And that was required. And every month when I submitted the pay app to the city and for my fees or pay apps for the contractors, I had to have affidavits from every single contractor saying this is what they use their labor money for. We also, part of this is all coming from those public meetings. We said 30% of the subcontractors and suppliers have to be from city and Durham County. That was response to somebody saying, you're just going to take this money and go do something else with it in a different city. They're going to get the advantage of an economic impact. So all that I was doing is somebody would say something, I would go, here's the answer to it, check, got that solved. And so when we put it in contract form, and if you wanted to work on this project, you had to do that. And so because of the minority things, we ended up having 52 bid packages instead of 3 or 4, because we had a big painter and a little painter. We had a big sheetrocker and a little sheetrocker. We had meetings ahead of time where we were able to team people up together, minority, small project person with a bigger firm, and said, okay, you guys bid this thing over here. It wasn't easy to do, but we met those goals. Okay, but how do you pay for this thing? The other stuff became really easy to solve problems, but the hard part was paying for it. And so we had to, again, Mr. Bell and Mayor Bell and the city council were saying, you have to cover the capital cost, the cost of the project. You have to pay for all the operating costs, and you have to pay all the long-term capital improvements for the term of the bonds. So for 30 years, we had to come up with ways that we can have signed contracts with all these different funders that we're going to have all this money set aside. And it was quite a circus at times. But we came up with a list of ways we can get money. Upfront capital, we could go to naming rights, which Blue Cross Blue Shield came in and bought the atrium space for $1 million. Capital Broadcasting came in, $350,000 20-year deal, $7 million or so. That adds up right. And bought the plaza out front of the building. What a great thing. When we were trying to sell a whole name for the whole shooting match for $400,000. So it could have been Capital Broadcasting Center. But the Goodmans stepped forward, and when I was negotiating with this with Jim, he said, you need more money than what I got. You got to sell those naming rights or else we're never going to get here. And so the naming rights, we had corporate sponsorships and private fundraising and fighting. We sold some private naming rights. The Tier family came in and bought the stage for another $1 million over 10 years. And so there were people out there that were coming, wanting to be part of this thing, that started building. And then Duke University came in, at first with $5 million, and then they increased their gift to $7.5 million. Some of the annual things, when we started bringing some of these, the ticket event rentals, PFM Nederlander said, no, that's ours. Ticket surcharges, we went, well, maybe we'll split that way. And so we had to negotiate all these things. And seat licenses were something we wanted to try to do. So you can, like at a pro football stadium, you can go buy a seat license. So you can get the same seat every time you go. You own that seat. You still got to buy a ticket. But nobody else can buy that exact seat. Annual naming rights, corporate sponsorships, parking. Boy, that was something that we tried hard to get. But the city said, no, we just built $40 million worth of parking lots and decks for American Tobacco, and we want that money. So we didn't even get parking revenue. So when we fill up the stadium, our theater with 2,800 seats, and we bring in 1,600 cars at $5 a pop, that could be pretty good revenue. And it is pretty good revenue for the city. And they're now retiring the debt, the bonds on those decks. And interest earning on debt service, which was pretty interesting that we found that, and that ended up being about $900,000 in the end. Where after we borrowed $30-some million, it sat in the bank as we were building it, collecting interest. And so we were actually able to use that excess funds generated by that fund to put back towards the building. Very own companion. Let's talk about the process. I think I talked a little bit about these public meetings, which are really critical to the success of this project. And it's why, if there's another project out there, you should go out there and throw everything you have at it. And if it sticks and the problem can be solved, it can make a project better. It's not fun going through those meetings with knives being thrown at you and stuff. It does make it good. But we had 4 kind of parallel things going on one time. What is the theater design? What is it? What's the programming? What do we really need? The master planning for that whole American Tobacco precinct. The strategic operating planning on how this works with the city. And then how do we fund this thing? And so we had multiple meetings every day, trying to walk this thing through and trying to bring everything back to these public meetings as we can. There are always surprises. One of the greatest surprises that we had was Vivian. Vivian Road is owned by the city today. We found out, if you look at any map, it says Vivian Public, which means that they maintain it. It was owned by the railroad. And 3 months before closing, our attorney said, you have a problem. You can't build on Vivian. And here we are. We've designed the whole building. We've gone through all these public processes. In the parking lot in front of DPAC, all the way up to the railroad tracks, is a very wide easement that the railroad, North Carolina Railroad Corporation, owns. And so we had to quickly jump in there and come up, and we bought Vivian for $275,000 right at the last minute. They could have given it to us. We've been maintaining it since the 30s. It's been there. But the North Carolina Railroad Corporation, if you know who they are, and hopefully nobody's here, they're great, wonderful people, but they really don't care about you using their land. And they'll, the road, Mangum goes across it. There's no rights that anybody has to cross that. Mangum, the DOT has no rights to cross the railroad property. Same thing with Blackwell Street, Corcoran. They were really trying hard for us to close Corcoran as part of this deal because during the design phase of this, I think we lost 2 lives at that intersection with train accidents. It was and is still a dangerous place. So we had these public meetings, and these meetings here of my consultants where we would get together once a month and go over the plan of the project. And we call this process design, and it really is, it's a lot of work, but it's fun when I get 25, 30 people in the room, and each one of those tags you see up there, different colors, has somebody's name on it. And those are things that they're actually guaranteeing me they'll have something done on that day. And 95% of the time, that's what happened. because we were moving fast. Because we did have a deadline to break ground. The legislation in 2001 gave us until some in 2005, September 2005 or something like that. And we were going, okay, what does that really mean? Does that mean I can park a truck out there? Can I just dig a hole? Can I have a city council out there? When I have a groundbreaking, do I have to have my fence up? All this kind of stuff. And boy, we were scrambling trying to get this here. But the attorney said, no, that means you have your fence around it, you have your building permits, you're out there, full contract, ready to go, breaking ground. We have just a great day with everybody with a shovel in their hand, and we started a couple of days before the deadline. And one of the things that I'm not sure if there's anybody here with the Durham Convention and Visitors Bureau, but if we wouldn't have made that date, all the money from the hotel occupancy tax would have gone to them. And so it was always kind of interesting as we went through this process, seeing if they're going to be for us or against us on any particular item. Some of the early master planning, again. And one of the kind of things that you really don't think about performing arts centers is the noise. If you talk about a room like this, typical conference room may have a sound coefficient of 50, just to give you a number out of 100. And it's pretty quiet, but you know, I can hear this fan. I can hear different things going on at the same time. Carnegie Hall has 5. You can't hear anything in there. We were shooting for about a 20. But we have the railroad is 500 feet from our front door. We put seismographs out on our site, and just the Mangum Street, you can feel every car going through that site. You can feel the heavy trucks going on 147. And then we have fireworks. And we have a parking deck on our stage wall. Just things that just would drive you crazy as an acoustician, which it did drive me crazy. But we're still working together on different projects. But he came. I mean, one of some of the suggestions that he had was we had to every single piece of steel in the building had to have a frequency that didn't meet the certain range, so it wouldn't start humming because of the vibration of the railroad track. All that could be translated in that. That was one of the things that we found alternatives to do, but we had to do all those things to think about this project. So what we did here on the theater, we actually designed a box in a box. So you see this beautiful hall once you walk into the hall, but the red hall that goes around there that you enter in, that's an air cavity between the inside and outside walls, which gave us our acoustical separation. With that railroad out there, there's no doubt why that group of bathrooms is between the tracks in our hall. We were doing everything we can do to block sound. Even on the roof, you know, it's a concrete roof, so we can, you know, when it rains, you're not going to hear the rain through there. Also helps with fireworks and things like that. But really, the big, you know, our goal was not to hear the train going through during an event there. And if I have the train schedule out, and I know exactly what time it is when I'm in there in shift, I can barely kind of think that I hear something. But most people don't recognize the sounds. Talked about the loading dock, and this is some circulation issues. When we started this project with our theater consultants, we said, give us a program on what a 2,800 seat theater needs to be as far as square footage. And they came back with about 250,000 square feet. And I knew that translated into $80 to $100 million. And we knew at that time we thought we had about 35 million. And so this theater is right at 105,000. So we took over half that program out with these public meetings and with PFMD going in. So what do we really, really need? I mean, really need. Don't just say you need something, because I'm going to test it. We tested everything that needed. So we got this down to 105,000 square feet. One of the things here that I'm pretty proud of is you see these blue arrows coming up from under the seats. If you've been there, you notice that the air conditioning is coming up underneath you, underneath all the seat rows. And that was for a pretty big issue. The energy that this thing takes to kind of keep a 2,800 people sitting in a little room or a big room cool is pretty awesome. And you've been to a lot of auditoriums probably where you see big ductwork overhead. When you're doing that, you know, the heat rises and people are trying to shove a lot of air conditioning down through the heat to get it to the seats. And so in this case, that would have been 55-degree air that by the time you pushed it down, you would have 65-degree air at the seat level, with a lot of horsepower, a lot of fan and noise that all that takes to do. And so we put all the air conditioning underneath the seats it saved about 40% of the energy. So that's horsepower, about 10% of the horsepower it would take to blow that cold air. And we actually are pushing 65-degree air. And so we've saved about 40% of the energy a typical theater would have used by doing it this way. Some lights. We also looked at how do we put on a show that's less than 2,800 seats. So we looked at the possibility of curtaining off the top deck, and also the idea about a orchestra shell, which still may be in the picture one day, where we can actually have more of a natural acoustics. The acoustics in this hall, everybody's raved about them. Dominic Sachs out of New York, Sound Associates, sings at the Metropolitan Opera. He designed our acoustical systems, but this hall is designed as an electronic sound, for electronic sound. But he was able to model this whole 3D space for every seat, and we were able to tune the electronics and the speaker systems that we're using on this. So every seat had incredible sound. But Dominic could, you know, if I go up there and I try to talk, you're in the top balcony, and I was trying to talk to you or yell at you, you wouldn't hear me at the top because there's all this incredible sound absorbent material that you'll see on the walls, the gold fabric panels, plus the whole ceiling or the roof of this is, everybody knows what popcorn on ceilings is, but this is popcorn done for dinosaurs. It's like 2 or 3 inches thick. And so you can't even hear yourself up there. And so, but he can sing on stage, and I can hear him on top. He has that much power in his voice. One of the things that we considered, this is Overture Center, where that acoustical shell that I just showed you, what we have is the proscenium opening on the right, but at Overture Center, and what we were looking at here was to be able to dismantle that front and have this behind it. So you could have a symphony there, and this would have cost another $3 to $5 million. And since I was a developer raising money, that was one of the things I didn't want to put myself through. We had a lot of people come to the table and talk about sustainability at the public meetings. And so we went through several meetings where we talked about leadership in energy and environmental design. And so they give, I'm sure you've heard about LEED, a lot of cities, municipalities, and states actually require you to LEED at some level. And so we picked the LEED Gold, which was almost the highest you could have. And going through these checklists here, brownfield development, we knew we had that taken care of, but we actually, you know, the green squares over here on the left is what we said, yes, we can do. We were on a site that allowed easy access to train and transit. Stormwater design, this heat island effect, where we're taking out all the asphalt that was in American Tobacco, and now we have a big green park. Different things like that, light pollution, water efficiency, how do we water our plants, energy and atmosphere. And so out of the 40, which says credit 1, we use 6 points for that 40% of energy that we saved. Just a lot of different, we went through a lot of different things and modeled this to be LEED certified as well. We decided not to go after LEED certification. It would have cost another $300,000 for the certificate. Well, I don't need a certificate, I need a Performing Arts Center. And just went through this whole process, and we got 40 of the 69 points, which would have given us our goal. One of the interesting things that it really surprised me how well this worked. I said we had 52 bid packages, and some of those we had to bid 3 times, trying to get, because you're required by law to have at least 3 bidders, and then you can rebid it, and if you have a certain amount, then you can have 2, and then you can, with the last one, you have 1. Where we had people coming to the table with bid packages where there was actually, saw people with 2 sets of bids. One, if there's no competition, I'll give them this high number, and this is my real competitive bid. And so we had to go through that, but we did ask everybody, after we got the final low bids in, come back with ideas on how would we save money on this, because we still were a little bit above budget. And so what we did here is, let's say number 12, the elevators. There's little bells that ring, and the elevator goes up in the lobby. You know, it's there. I could save $390 if I took those out. I did. There's better things to do with that $390 besides spending on a positioning out there. And so, same thing with HVAC, a lot of different things we went through here. But it allowed us to really get down to what we really had to have on this. Some of the big budget numbers, you can see that the total contingency we had was almost $3 million up here on the very right. And that was for the soils. We knew that we had bad soils, but since the city said, don't come back to us if it's bad soils, you didn't have enough money to cover it. So we budgeted every spoonful of dirt coming off that site had to be taken off-site and disposed of as hazardous waste, which we spent, of that $500,000 that went just to the soils, we spent about $30,000 to $40,000. So we really lucked out. And so that extra money that we didn't use in that contingency here got to be put back into the building. And so the strategy that we had is we're going to bid the Performing Arts Center that had concrete floors and sheetrock walls. Nothing like you see today. With the hopes that we can manage this contingency to add things back. And so what you see today out there with the wood walls inside and the beautiful red carpet, all that kind of stuff was added to the project after we started. Here's a thing that's really hard to believe too. All these things on the left here are items that have to be replaced either every 5 years or every 10 years or every 15 years, 20 years or 30 years. And so we added those up, escalated them for the 25, 30 years out, and came up with we need another $12 million somehow to be generated on this building besides the construction cost. What we talked PFM Nederlander and the city into doing is to charge, when you buy a ticket, there's all these other charges that are added to that ticket cost, and one of them is maintenance and things. We actually had a facility fee, this $1 up here, that would go into a capital improvement budget. So you can see over here, after on the very right, the capital, after we spend that money, the $12 million, what we had on this plan here was after that, we still end up by selling a $1 a ticket, $20 million in this fund to maintain this building. And we started then talking about, well, let's see where we are in 5 years, and if we have excess funds, maybe there's something else we can do that can go towards the cultural arts master plan. So today we have $3-point-something million in a fund to maintain this building that's being maintained perfectly for the future. But you see here, this is what I showed the City Council in 2005. We projected that we'll sell in the first year 199,000 tickets. We sold less than that, but the next year we sold a lot more. And today we're selling about 400,000 tickets, I believe. And so we're putting $400,000 a year into this net. But we ended up, actually that first year, making money, giving the city back, Keith, I don't know if you know that number the first year, but it was almost $1 million. And the next year was $2.1 million on top of this money. And so today we have a model that works great for the city of Durham, and I think it'll work really good for other cities where they're actually partnering with the operator. The operator's making a lot of money. If we're making $2 million, our negotiated split was we get 40% of the profit, and they get 60% of the profit. So if we're getting $2 million, that means that they're getting $4 million. So they're making a good amount of money. One of the hard things that happened, we went through, we had naming rights, we had the money, we had Duke University, we had the occupancy tax. And it came down to the last month and a half before we had to go to city council, and we were still shy of $500,000 a year. And one of the hardest decisions we made that day is the developers, Garfield Traub and I, agreed that we would take 60% of that, no, we would take 2/3 of that, we would guarantee that money. Meaning that I would guarantee, say, $300,000 a year payment if we didn't raise that money. The city of Durham, with Alan Delisle, there was a downtown development fund that had money in it, and he guaranteed the other third of that. So today, I'm the proud guarantor of $500,000 partnered with the city a year, that when that those first year numbers came in, I felt good. I felt even better the second, third, and now almost the fifth year. But we're still today on the note with the city on these bonds, which I hope one day we can get off of. And we just need to go through the public process of asking to be released from those bonds. But it was a pretty stupid thing to do privately for me to partner with the city of Durham to guarantee that much money. But we did it. It was really, really hard at the time, but we had to have this thing built. Some of the pictures, the idea about this thing was it was going to be a lantern in downtown Durham that would really glow and show everybody the new energy that there is. There's no way to hide from this in downtown Durham if you go there during an event. Also, it's not shown here very well, but there's the big light. This last one shows it. The Jean de Plenza sculpture, it really is a bridge between heaven and earth. Was a gift from Capitol Broadcasting and Jim Goodman. That's a 7,000 watt light bulb. How hard is that to install? And so we had, there's a room essentially underneath the plaza with this light bulb, which is about that big, that you have to wear safety suits to even get close to. And it has to have air intake to cool it off, just like a big radiator. But it was quite the operation, and this came right at the end. Same thing Jim said. Jim had a deal with the city that he would be able to buy the rest of the land at $4 a square foot that the theater did not need. And so what Jim did, he saw that big parking lot and the junk pile that we had between here and American Tobacco, and said, "This is 2 months before opening. Phil, we got to get grass on that." And he personally and his team went out there and put that park in and bought sod in to fix it up. And on opening day, that was just awesome. But seeing this beehive of people walking back and forth during the show, there's nothing like it that I've seen. We had a great time, you know. There really weren't a lot of people that told me what to do on this job, which is like fantasy. My client were the people of Durham. City council would say certain things, but there wasn't anybody that said, Phil, change that. I don't like that. They could make me do it. And so as an architect, it was kind of, and the developer, it was my job to kind of balance the aesthetics on this with the money. And so I made some really hard decisions on certain things so that we could have a decent piece of architecture downtown. But if you remember, this was concrete floors. And so now we have a custom carpet. The interior, all this was just painted sheetrock with concrete floors. Turned out pretty nice. I think that's it. Right on time.
Yeah, that was great. Phil, will you answer a few questions that they may have?
Yes, sir.
What is your current occupancy rate, and where do you see that going?
I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but I think there have been, out of the 200 roughly shows that we have, 70-ish are 100% sold out. And we're at probably even 90% occupancy of every seat on most of the shows.
So if your income is going to increase, the only way to do that is to raise prices.
Yeah. But one of the things here is, I mean, I hope we can just maintain the funding stream we have now. I mean, this is shocking everybody in the world that we're making so much money and we're selling so many tickets. I don't think, I mean, it'd be hard to think about this thing losing 10% of its seats. We'd still be making money. We'd still be way ahead of what we did. Our break even on this was 60% occupancy for 100 shows a year. That was our break even. And now we're at 200 shows and 90% occupancy. And so it's just been phenomenal. Yes?
Is there a national standard for occupancy? You said 60%, you were hoping.
At the feasibility level, 60%.
Yeah. 60%.
Yes.
In light of all of the information that's come out this past couple of 3 days about the new hotel and all the things that Jim has planned for that area down there on the piece of ground that he owns, how does that work with you? I mean, is it going to be something that will detract or add to? I mean, occupancy is one thing, but it's so beautiful just to see it. And I watched it come out of the ground because I was working downtown at that time.
Well, if you remember, if you go there now and look at the west side of DPAC, you see a pretty junky facade. We knew that we were going to build onto it. The only facade that I knew that was not going to be built on was Mangum Street and Vivian Street.
Okay.
And the whole idea to save money is let's not worry about what this looks, these other sides look like. We have a parking deck on the back, and one day somebody's going to build something. Maybe they'll hire the right architect, but they didn't. So we're doing the hotel, and we're doing the President's Club. It connects into this, and so I can say that it's not going to detract.
Okay, so you are going to be the architect. Good. It's nice to know that he has very good taste in architecture.
Very, very good taste, and he's a good friend. But it's going to be a nice thing. Yes.
One of the early compromises was going to be the sound system, and I was wondering how that all sorted out at the end.
We rented the sound system from Sound Associates, the people that designed it, for the first years until we knew that we were making money, and then we started buying our sound system. And so increasing the quality as we went. On day one with rental equipment, everybody said, man, you did great. I'm like, yeah.
I'd like to know, I'd like to know when you're going to put a sidewalk across that block. Now, who's responsible responsible for it. I walk from NCCU up to the city bus depot, and that is the most miserable part of my walk.
Which part are you talking about?
I'm talking about it right, the running, the block, the yard that runs right in front of the building.
Vivian Street?
Yes, I forget the names of the streets, but it's one block that well, when you pass the DPAC building, it's the white old tobacco office building.
From Blackwell.
On Blackwell. Blackwell is on the west coast side.
That's pretty awful. It's like built right up on the road
Right.
on there. I know that there's some plans that have been in the works to improve that whole Blackwell intersection that would take you all the way down to the bus station. But that was not part of the DPAC plans. But
Oh, that's not part of your land?
no,
Oh.
that's American Tobacco.
It's American Tobacco
Yeah.
still? Oh.
And that was bought by certain groups out of Baltimore. Yeah, Streever Brothers bought that old white building and ended up, I know just in the last month or so, Capital Broadcasting bought that. And so I think you'll see the same quality of work and the rest of American Tobacco brought to that end of campus as well. Yes, ma'am.
Any possibility of putting an escalator in for
Boy,
some of the
people
steps?
talk about that a lot.
Even
There's
just
probably
on one
two or
side?
three things that I knew that when I put this building in with those stairs that people will say, why didn't you do this? And my answer is I didn't have the money to. And so one of the things that we're asked every so often by the mayor is how do we get escalators in there? And it's not an easy thing to do. We're looking at we've looked at new elevators, we looked at escalators, and still could be part of the plan on this, particularly since they're making some money and to be able to do that. But I wish that was something we could have afforded early on.
As I said, I watched the building come up, and it's been so much fun to go and to listen to the people who thought that Durham couldn't build this, it shouldn't be built here, and we would never be able to sustain it, and to hear how much they appreciate the building and the quality of the shows that they've come to see, and then as they're going out to listen to them talking about it and generating all of the excitement that a Broadway show has brought to live up to them.
Very good. Yes, sir.
The open space on Vivian and on the plaza and in the park, will that remain there? I mean, that's
The Green Park area,
Yeah,
that's owned by Capital Broadcasting.
yeah.
And I know that it's been master planned several times, and even going through this process. And so I'm not sure what the future is there. It was great that Capital Broadcasting knew that it was a resource and when it needed to be cleaned up and went and spent the hundreds of thousands of dollars it took to clean it up and turn it into a park. And now so many events are held out there. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I wouldn't bet that it's going to stay there forever and ever.
I'll tell Jim that he should keep it forever. I'm serious. And as an architect, you know that open space invigorates the environment, people who are there, it invites them to come, all of that.
I know the hotel is going right up against, actually almost connecting to the theater. So there's that road that goes up between Vivian and Diamond View 2. It's on the theater side of that road. And that road is really being taken out and turned into a pedestrian way.
That won't affect the light though.
No, it's all behind a lot.
Have you been involved in the Tangier project in Greensboro? There was something on the radio today about it. No? Okay.
I don't know what project that is, but
That outlet mall is giving.
yeah, I know the outlet mall.
Yeah, it's given, that family's given like $7 million to Greensboro to do
Oh.
something, maybe in conjunction with UNCG.
I went to school with Susan Tanger. Any other questions? Thank you.
We can't thank you enough.